darkness welcomes you back to Void of Fears. Like this video to feed the algorithm. Comment your thoughts to summon more viewers. Subscribe to join our growing community on the road to 100k subscribers. Your support carries these nightmares to new eyes. Please help us reach our goal. Now, let's dive into the void. The stars held no comfort for me anymore. Not since that day. I've spent 30 years in the void between worlds, commanding vessels through the darkness of space, and I thought I'd seen it all. Asteroid storms that could shred a battlecruiser in seconds. Solar flares that cooked crews alive inside their ships. I've even witnessed the birth of a star. Beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. But nothing in my 3 decades of service prepared me for what we encountered at the edge of the Centauri system on that cold Thursday in 2187. My name is Jackson Wells, former commander of the UFS Dauntless. What I'm about to tell you has been classified at the highest levels. The official records have been purged, witness testimonies altered, and most who were there that day have either forgotten or convinced themselves it never happened. But I remember, God help me, I remember every detail. As I record this account, I do so knowing full well the risk. Fleet intelligence has operatives everywhere, and they've made it abundantly clear what happens to those who speak of what we saw. But I'm an old man now. The cancer spreading through my bones gives me perhaps 3 months. What more can they take from me that time hasn't already claimed? Besides, someone needs to know. Someone needs to understand what's out there watching us, judging us. Human expansion into deep space had been aggressive, perhaps too aggressive. We colonized 12 systems in under a century, establishing outposts and mining operations wherever resources could be found. The discovery of the Henderson Drive in 2129 had changed everything, allowing ships to create temporary corridors through space-time. Journeys that once would have taken generations now required mere weeks. With that expansion came the inevitable. We encountered others with similar ambitions. The Proxima Coalition, an alliance of 3 non-human species, had been expanding from the opposite direction. The Vex were the diplomats, with their crystalline exoskeletons and mathematical approach to communication. The Orathi, silicon-based beings, who communicated through light patterns across their translucent bodies, served as their scientists and engineers. And the Krell, massive 6-limbed creatures with natural armor plating, provided their military might. Our first contacts had been diplomatic, cautious. But diplomacy has its limits, especially when both sides covet the same resources. The Centauri border became the flashpoint, a string of disputed planets and asteroid fields that both humanity and the Coalition claimed. Skirmishes had been growing more frequent, more violent. Military analysts on Earth predicted full-scale war within months. The Dauntless was a Valiant-class battlecruiser among the most advanced in the United Fleet. 342 meters of hardened alloys and cutting-edge technology. Twin Henderson Drive arrays for faster-than-light travel. Mark the 7th, gravitational shielding capable of deflecting everything from micrometeorites to direct energy weapons. 4 railgun batteries, 6 plasma lance emplacements, and a complement of 48 Harpy interceptors. We were assigned to patrol the border, to show the flag, and respond to any incursions. A deterrent, they called us. Though privately many of us wondered if we were simply being positioned as the first casualties of the coming conflict. My senior officers were the best the fleet had to offer. Lieutenant Commander Rivera ran tactical with precision that bordered on prescience. A veteran of 3 border conflicts, she had an uncanny ability to predict enemy movements seconds before they happened. She had lost her left arm during the Europa incident, replacing it with a military-grade prosthetic that interfaced directly with the ship's tactical systems. Dr. Abigail Wilson served as our xenobiologist, unusual for a military vessel but essential given our mission. She'd spent 15 years studying non-human species across colonized space and spoke 3 coalition languages fluently. The brass had insisted on her presence, though they'd been vague about why a scientist with her credentials was necessary on what was ostensibly a military patrol. Chief Engineer Thompson had pulled miracles during 3 previous skirmishes, keeping us fighting when by all rights we should have been dead in space. Gruff and perpetually oil-stained, he treated the Dauntless's engines with more care than most parents showed their children. The crew joked that he could hear the ship's pain before the diagnostic systems detected it. And then there was communications specialist Patel, whose ability to pass alien transmissions had saved us more than once. Young, barely 25, but with a natural gift for languages and communication protocols that the Academy's finest AI tutors couldn't match. The rest of the crew numbered just over 200 souls. Marines, pilots, technicians, medical staff, all the best the fleet could offer. Many had families waiting back home. Most wouldn't see them again. "Commander, I'm picking up something unusual." Patel's voice cut through the quiet hum of the bridge on what had been an uneventful patrol. I moved to his station. "Define unusual." "Specialist." "Sir, well, I'm not entirely sure." His fingers danced across his console. "It's at the edge of our range, using frequencies that don't match known Proxima protocols." "Natural phenomenon?" "No, sir, definitely artificial. Wait." He adjusted something, and a fragmented transmission filled the bridge. "Under attack. Repeat. Outpost Darwin is under attack. Multiple hostile vessels. We cannot hold them. Request immediate..." Static consumed the rest. Darwin, our most remote scientific installation, studying a peculiar planetary nebula near the border. 68 civilians and a security detachment of 15. The outpost was performing deep space astronomical research, cataloguing anomalous stellar formations beyond the Coalition border. At least, that was the official story. "Helm, set course for Darwin, maximum speed," I ordered. "Tactical, sound general quarters. This is not a drill." The Dauntless surged forward, the ship transforming around us as crew rushed to battle stations. Hallway lighting switched to combat red. Bulkheads sealed automatically, compartmentalizing the vessel in case of hull breach. We'd made this run dozens of times in simulations. Never for real. "Time to intercept?" I asked. 27 minutes at current speed, the helm officer responded. I nodded. "What are we looking at, Rivera?" She studied her displays, face grim in the blue light. "Based on the transmission fragments and energy signatures, I'd guess at least 3 Proxima vessels, likely Hunter class." Hunter class. Vast, heavily armed ships designed specifically for overwhelming isolated targets. Each carried a complement of Krell boarding parties trained in zero-G combat. 1 we could handle. 3 would be problematic. Options? "Call for reinforcements," Rivera suggested. "Nearest fleet vessel is 4 hours out," Patel said without looking up. I rubbed the bridge of my nose. "So, we're on our own." "Sir," Dr. Wilson had been quietly monitoring the exchange. "May I speak freely?" I nodded. "The crew's been talking about the old stories." "This isn't the time for ghost stories, Doctor," Rivera cut in. "What stories?" I asked, curious despite myself. Wilson hesitated. "The Phantom Warship, sir. The one that appears when humanity is on the brink." Several bridge officers exchanged glances. I'd heard the legends too. What spacer hadn't? Tales whispered in mess halls and barracks across a dozen worlds. A vessel of impossible size and design that had supposedly appeared throughout human history during our darkest hours. Some claimed it was an ancient human warship from a civilization that had risen and fallen before recorded history. Others believed it was the last guardian of a long-extinct alien race that had once taken an interest in emerging sentient species. The stories varied in detail, but all agreed on one thing. It appeared only when humanity faced an existential threat, when we stood at the precipice of destruction. "We make our own luck, Doctor," I said firmly. "Prepare for combat operations." "Aye, sir." She returned to her station, but I could see she was troubled. As we dropped out of hyperspace near Darwin, the situation crystallized with brutal clarity. 3 Proxima vessels, Hunter class as predicted, circled the outpost like wolves. The installation's shields were failing, its outer structures already breached in multiple sections. Debris floated in a slowly expanding cloud around the station. Bodies too, I realized with a cold knot in my stomach. "Open a channel to the Proxima vessels," I ordered. "Channel open." "Attention Proxima vessels, this is Commander Wells of the UFS Dauntless. You are attacking a civilian scientific installation in violation of interstellar law. Withdraw immediately." The response was immediate. Concentrated weapons fire directed at the Dauntless. Energy beams lanced out, impacting our forward shields with furious intensity. "So much for diplomacy," Rivera muttered. "Shields are holding at 87%. Return fire. Target the lead vessel's propulsion systems." The battle was joined. Our railguns accelerated projectiles to devastating velocities, while energy weapons lashed between vessels like lightning. The void bloomed with silent explosions as ordnance found its mark or dissipated against shields. We were good, the best, but the odds were stacked against us. For every hit we scored, we took 2 in return. The Dauntless shuddered as systems began to fail. "Shields at 32% and falling," Rivera reported. "Port weapons array offline." "Reroute power from non-essential systems," I ordered. "Engineering status." Thompson's voice came through scratchy on the comm. "Main reactor stable, but we've lost 2 power distribution nodes. I've got teams rerouting critical systems, but it's a stopgap at best." On the main view screen, I watched as one of the Proxima vessels broke formation to focus on the outpost. Their intentions were clear. They meant to finish what they'd started. "Helm, put us between that ship and Darwin," I commanded. The Dauntless responded sluggishly, her damaged systems struggling to comply. We managed to position ourselves as a shield, taking fire meant for the outpost. "Commander," Patel called out, "I'm receiving a transmission from the Proxima commander." The screen shifted to show an alien face, grey-skinned with multiple eye stalks that moved independently. A Vex diplomat, unusual for a military operation. The Coalition's universal translator converted its clicking speech to stilted English. "Human vessel, your position is untenable. Surrender your ship and withdraw your presence from this region. This is your only warning." Before I could respond, the screen went dark. "They've cut transmission," Patel confirmed, "and sir, something else. I'm detecting an unusual gravitational anomaly forming 2,000 kilometers off our starboard side." A murmur ran through the bridge crew. "Specify unusual," I demanded. "It's as if space itself is folding, sir. I've never seen readings like this." "Put it on screen." The view screen shifted to show empty space. And then it wasn't empty. The void seemed to ripple, to distort as though we were viewing it through heat haze. Stars behind the distortion shifted position, their light bending impossibly. "Sir," Patel's voice was barely audible, "we're picking up transmissions on frequencies that haven't been used since. They don't match anything in our database." The distortion grew, expanded, and then solidified into something that struck primitive fear into every person on that bridge. A ship, if such a mundane word could even describe what materialized before us. It was vast, dwarfing both our vessel and the Proxima ships combined. Its hull defied conventional design, with angles that seemed to change as you looked at them, and surfaces that absorbed rather than reflected light. No visible propulsion systems, no weapons arrays, no external sensors that we could identify. It simply existed, an affront to everything we understood about spacecraft design and propulsion. "My God," Wilson whispered, "it's real." The mysterious vessel hung in space, utterly motionless. No energy signatures, no radiation, nothing to indicate it was operational. Yet its presence was undeniable. "Are they responding to hails?" I asked, my mouth suddenly dry. Patel shook his head. "No, sir. I've tried all frequencies, all known protocols. No response." The battle had momentarily paused. All vessels, human and Proxima alike, seemingly transfixed by the newcomer. I used the respite to check on the outpost. "Darwin, this is Dauntless. Status report." The response came through weak and interrupted by static. "Dauntless, this is Director Reynolds. We've lost pressure in 3 sections. Medical reporting 17 confirmed casualties, 40 plus wounded. Defense systems at 12% capacity." "Hold on, Darwin. We're doing everything we can." "Commander," Reynolds' voice dropped to a near whisper, "did you bring it with you?" "Bring what?" "The Observer, the ship from the old stories." Before I could respond, a new sensation swept over me. A feeling of being observed. Not just watched, but studied, as though something was peering directly into my consciousness. From the expressions on my crew's faces, I wasn't alone in feeling it. Images flashed through my mind unbidden. Ancient battles on Earth's oceans. World War III's orbital conflicts. The Mars Rebellion. In each fragmented vision, just at the edge of perception, a shape similar to the vessel before us hovered, watching. The Proxima vessels recovered from their shock first. As though acting on a shared impulse, all 3 directed their weapons towards the mysterious ship. Energy beams and projectiles streaked across the void, only to vanish without effect as they neared their target. For precisely 3 minutes by the ship's chronometer, the vessel remained motionless, observing, judging. Then it moved. There was no visible propulsion, no flare of engines. One moment it was stationary, the next it had positioned itself between the Dauntless and the Proxima fleet. What happened next defies explanation within the bounds of known physics. A pulse, not of energy or matter as we understand them, emanated from the vessel. When it passed through the Proxima ships, they simply stopped. Engines offline, weapons powerless, their hulls drifting in space like abandoned derelicts. Then, a single beam of light so intensely bright that our view screens automatically dimmed, cut through the void. It didn't strike anything, but instead carved what appeared to be a path, a corridor of disturbed space leading away from the battlefield, toward Proxima territory. "Commander," Patel's voice was shaking, "we're receiving something." The message came not through our communication systems, but directly into our minds. Each of us would later describe hearing it in our native language, in voices that reminded us of loved ones long gone. "The trial continues. You are not yet ready, but you have potential. We will watch." And then, as mysteriously as it had appeared, the vessel began to fade from normal space. Not jumping to hyperspace or using any recognizable form of propulsion, simply phasing out of our reality until only empty void remained where it had been. The Proxima vessels, suddenly released from whatever force had gripped them, began to retreat. Their engines reignited, weapon systems came back online. But instead of resuming the attack, they flared at maximum speed along the path the light beam had carved. "Sir," Rivera's voice broke the stunned silence on the bridge. "Darwin Outpost is reporting multiple casualties and severe structural damage, but they're stable. They're requesting immediate assistance." I nodded, still trying to process what we'd witnessed. "Set course for the outpost. Prepare medical and engineering teams for emergency support operations." As the Dauntless limped toward Darwin, I ordered Patel to compile all sensor data from the encounter and transmit it directly to United Fleet Command, highest security protocols. The response came within minutes. Classification level, Omega. All records to be surrendered. Debrief teams en route. Maintain communication blackout. In the days that followed, something strange began to happen. Ship logs corrupted. Sensor recordings degraded to uselessness. Crew members' recollections became confused, contradictory, then faded altogether. Within a week, only Dr. Wilson and I seemed to retain clear memories of what had transpired. "It's like something's erasing it from their minds," Wilson said when she came to my quarters late one night, voice hushed despite our privacy shields. "I've been interviewing the crew. The ones who can still remember anything at all describe it differently each time. The details keep changing." "Fleet intelligence." She shook her head. "I don't think they have this capability. It's too precise, too clean." "You think it's the ship, the observer?" "I think whatever it is, it doesn't want to be remembered. Not fully, just enough to enter our collective subconscious as legend." She hesitated. "There's something else. Director Reynolds from Darwin wants to speak with you, privately." I met Reynolds the next day in the medical bay. He'd lost an arm and suffered severe radiation burns, but his mind was clear. Clearer than most when it came to what we'd witnessed. "It wasn't there by accident," he said without preamble. "The observer." He nodded. "We found something in the nebula. That's what the Proxima were after." He glanced around, then lowered his voice. "Ancient technology. Not human, not Proxima. Something else. Older than both our species combined." "What kind of technology?" "A beacon. Still active after God knows how long. We were studying it when the Proxima attacked." He gripped my arm with surprising strength. "It was calling to it, Commander. The beacon was calling to the observer." "Why?" "I don't know. But there are more beacons out there. We found references in the transmissions. This is bigger than a border dispute." His eyes grew distant. "It's watching us. All of us. Has been for thousands of years. To what end? That's the question, isn't it?" Reynolds smiled grimly. "The trial continues," it said. "What if that's literal? What if we're being tested?" Before I could question him further, medical staff arrived to prepare him for surgery. As they wheeled him away, he called back. "Check the ancient records, Commander. We're not the first to be observed. We won't be the last." 2 days later, Reynolds died on the operating table. Complications from his injuries, the medical report stated. I had my doubts. The official report on the Darwin incident was released a week after we returned to base. It stated that the Dauntless had engaged 3 Proxima vessels threatening outpost Darwin. Through tactical brilliance and exceptional bravery, we had driven them off despite being outnumbered. 12 crew members received commendations. I was promoted to Admiral. A lie, wrapped in honours to ensure my silence. Dr. Wilson was reassigned to a deep space research facility in a system so remote it didn't even have a proper name yet. We maintained contact through encrypted channels for several months before her messages suddenly stopped. Official records claimed she died in a lab accident. Another convenient truth. I threw myself into my new role, using my increased clearance to search for any references to the observer or similar encounters, for anything that might explain what we'd seen. The first breakthrough came during a diplomatic function on Europa. An aging admiral from the Asian Alliance, deep in his cups, began telling stories from his early career. One tale in particular caught my attention, a pacification mission against separatist forces in the asteroid belt. His ship, outgunned and surrounded, had been saved by the sudden appearance of an Angel vessel that had disabled the enemy fleet without firing a shot. When I pressed him for details, his demeanour changed instantly. He excused himself and avoided me for the remainder of the gathering. The next morning, he claimed no memory of our conversation. Years passed. I rose through the ranks, always watching for signs that others remembered, that someone else had witnessed similar encounters, always listening for whispers of the phantom warship. I found them in unexpected places. A paragraph in an obscure historical text about the Battle of Midway, describing an impossibly large vessel, briefly observed beneath the waves. A painting from the Spanish Armada showing a strange craft hovering above the fleets. Cave drawings from prehistoric humans depicting a shape uncannily similar to what we'd seen, watching over a battle between tribes. Then, 3 days before my retirement, a package arrived. No sender information, no digital trail. Inside was a single data crystal and a handwritten note that said simply, "You are not the first. You will not be the last." The crystal contained historical records, hundreds of them, dating back centuries. Accounts from sea captains, fighter pilots, shuttle commanders, all describing encounters with a vessel matching what we'd seen. The details varied with the era's technology and understanding, but the essence remained consistent. A mysterious craft appearing at humanity's darkest hour, observing, sometimes intervening, then vanishing without explanation. The final file was a star chart. A region of space humanity had yet to explore, was marked with symbols in an unknown language. As I studied it, that same sensation washed over me, of being observed, evaluated. I showed the chart to an old friend at the Xenolinguistics Institute, claiming I'd found it in my grandfather's effects. His analysis was troubling. "These aren't just symbols," he explained. "They're warnings, danger, test, judgment. At least, that's my best interpretation. Where did you really get this, Jack?" I never answered his question. 2 days later, he died in a house fire. The authorities ruled it an accident. The crystal and chart disappeared from my secure home safe the same night. I began to understand then. Whatever the observer was, it had agents or means of influence here among us. Perhaps it had always been watching, not just during crises, but continuously, through eyes we never suspected. My retirement was quiet. A small ceremony, a few speeches, then oblivion. The fleet had no further use for an admiral who asked too many questions about classified incidents. I was politely but firmly ushered into obscurity. I moved to my family's old property in the mountains, away from the sprawling arcologies that most of humanity now called home. Built a cabin with my own hands, like my great-grandfather had done centuries before. Lived off the land as much as possible, minimizing my digital footprint. And I watched the stars every night, wondering if it was up there, watching, waiting. Then came the diagnosis. Advanced bone cancer metastasized throughout my skeleton. Inoperable. Terminal. 3 months, perhaps 4, with aggressive treatment. I declined treatment. What was the point? Better to keep my mind clear for whatever time I had left. A week after the diagnosis, I received another package. Inside was a military-grade neural recorder, technology restricted to the highest levels of fleet intelligence, and a note. "Tell your story. Someone needs to know." I didn't question who had sent it. I simply began recording, speaking my truth into the void, hoping someone would hear it, understand it. 2 days ago, something changed. I was sitting on my porch, watching the sunset, when I felt it again. That sense of being observed, studied. I looked up to see a shooting star. Except it moved wrong, changed direction in a way no natural object could. That night, a visitor arrived. A young woman in civilian clothes, but with the bearing of fleet. She didn't give her name. "Admiral Wells," she said, "I represent a group within the fleet that shares your concerns." "What concerns are those?" I asked, playing dumb. She smiled thinly. "About our observers, about the trials." She told me then what they'd learned. The beacons Darwin had discovered were part of a network, ancient technology left by civilizations long extinct, testing grounds of a sort. Each beacon activated when a species reached a certain level of development, and each would eventually attract the observer. "We think it's automated," she explained, "part of a system designed to evaluate emerging intelligences, to determine if they're worthy of something." "Of what?" "We don't know. Preservation, elevation, destruction. There are patterns in the archaeological record, civilizations that reached our current level of development, then simply vanished without explanation. And you think we're next? She nodded. Fleet intelligence is aware of the pattern. That's why they've been suppressing information about the observer. They believe knowledge of it might affect the outcome of whatever test we're undergoing. But your group disagrees. We believe humanity deserves to know what's at stake, that our only chance of passing the test, whatever it is, lies in understanding its nature. She told me about Project Sentinel then, not an exploration mission as the public had been told, but a deliberate attempt to trigger another appearance of the observer under controlled conditions. They'd built a ship specifically for the purpose, incorporated elements of the ancient technology found at Darwin. The mission launches in 3 days, she said. We want you there. Your experience with the observer might prove crucial. I laughed bitterly. I'm dying. What good would I be? We have methods of temporarily halting your condition, long enough for the mission. I considered refusing. I'd made my peace with death, with leaving behind the burden of knowledge I'd carried for decades. But something Reynolds had said all those years ago echoed in my mind. The trial continues. When do we leave? I asked. She smiled. Now. We travelled by night, avoiding main transportation hubs. My identity had been carefully scrubbed from all official manifests. As far as Fleet Command knew, Admiral Jackson Wells remained in his mountain cabin, slowly dying of cancer. The launch facility was hidden beneath the surface of Deimos, Mars's smaller moon. As we descended in the shuttle, I could see the massive ship they constructed. Sleek, dangerous, unlike any vessel in the current fleet. Its hull incorporated elements I recognized from the observer, those same unsettling angles that seemed to change as you looked at them. We reversed and engineered what we could from the ancient technology, my guide explained. The rest is our best approximation. Does it work? We're about to find out. The ship, they called it the Emissary, was crewed by volunteers. Scientists, soldiers, diplomats, all aware of the true nature of their mission, all willing to risk everything to make contact. I was brought to the bridge where a familiar face awaited me. Older, scarred, but unmistakable. Dr. Wilson, I breathed. She smiled, the expression pulling tight against the burn scar that covered half her face. Admiral, it's been a long time. They told me you were dead. For all official purposes, I am. It made my work easier. She gestured around the bridge. Welcome to humanity's answer to the observer. You built this? With help from others who remember. There aren't many of us, but we're motivated. She explained their plan as the ship prepared for launch. The emissary would travel to the coordinates marked on the star chart I'd been sent years ago. There they believed they would find another beacon, one powerful enough to summon the observer directly. And then we talk to it, Wilson said simply. We ask what it wants from us, what the trial is testing, how we can pass. And if it doesn't want to talk, her expression hardened. Then we use what we've learned from the ancient technology and make it listen. The launch was flawless. The Henderson drive engaged without incident, creating a corridor through space-time that would carry us to our destination in just under 72 hours. I spent those hours reviewing everything they gathered about the observer, sightings throughout history, analyses of the beacon technology, translations of the alien language found on the star chart. It painted a disturbing picture. The observer wasn't unique. It was one of many, assigned to different sectors of the galaxy. Each monitored dozens, perhaps hundreds of developing civilizations. Each administered tests when those civilizations reached critical developmental junctures, and not all civilizations survived their testing. We found evidence of at least 7 species that reached our level of technology, then disappeared within a century, Wilson told me during one of our briefings. No war, no natural disaster. They simply stopped. Failed the test, I murmured. Precisely. And you think we're being tested now? I think the border conflict with the Proxima Coalition is part of it. 2 young species, both aggressive, both expansionist, meeting at the edge of their territories. A perfect test scenario. For what? Our capacity for war? Or our capacity for peace? She shrugged. That's what we need to find out. On the 3rd day, we arrived at our destination. A binary star system, unremarkable, save for a small planetoid orbiting at an unusual distance from both stars. According to the instruments, the planetoid was artificial, a constructed object roughly the size of Earth's moon. The beacon, Wilson breathed. As we approached, the planetoid began to emit energy on frequencies identical to those we'd recorded during the observer's appearance at Darwin. A signal, a summons. Hours passed. The crew grew tense, expecting at any moment to witness the same spatial distortion that had heralded the observer's arrival years before. Nothing happened. Maybe it needs more time, someone suggested. More hours passed. Still nothing. The beacon continued its transmission, but there was no response, until I felt it again. That sensation of being watched, studied. But this time, it came from within the ship. It's here, I said suddenly. It's been here all along. Wilson frowned. What do you mean? The observer. It's not coming because it's already here. I looked around the bridge, in us, through us, watching through our eyes. Understanding dawned on her face. The memory alterations, the way records disappeared. It's been inside our systems from the beginning. The ship's main view screen activated without command. On it appeared a message in the same alien script found on the star chart. Then it shifted, rearranged itself into English. The trial is not for us to explain. It is for you to understand. What are you testing? Wilson demanded. What do you want from us? Comprehension, adaptation, growth. And if we fail? Others have failed. Others will come after. You would let us destroy ourselves, wipe ourselves out fighting the Proxima. Self-destruction is failure. Those who fail are not ready. Ready for what? I asked. What comes next? The screen went dark. At the same moment, alarms blared throughout the ship. The Henderson drive was activating, without command, preparing to return us to the solar system. Override, Wilson shouted to the engineering officer. I can't. The system isn't responding. The corridor formed ahead of us. A tunnel through space-time leading back to Earth. Back to the war that was brewing. Back to the test we still didn't understand. As the emissary entered the corridor, the view screen activated one final time. A single message appeared. The trial continues. We will watch. We emerged from the corridor near Jupiter, our communication systems immediately overwhelmed by distress calls and battle orders. In the 3 days we'd been gone, the Cold War with the Proxima Coalition had turned hot. Battles raged across the border. Earth was preparing for full-scale conflict. They're taking us home to watch us fail, Wilson whispered. Or to give us one last chance to succeed, I replied. The cancer had progressed during our journey, pain spreading through my bones, despite the medical treatments. I had weeks at most, not months, as originally predicted. But perhaps that was time enough. Take me to Earth, I told Wilson. I need to speak with the Security Council. They'll never listen. Not in the middle of a war. They will if we bring them proof. I gestured to the ship around us. This vessel is all the evidence we need. The technology, the recordings, everything you've gathered. You want to tell them about the observer? Fleet intelligence will bury it all, just like before. Not if we make it public. All of it broadcast to every colony, every outpost. Let humanity decide its own fate. She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded. It might just work, or it might make no difference at all. Either way, I said, we try. That's what humans do. The journey to Earth took 18 hours. In that time, we prepared our evidence, our testimony, everything we knew about the observer, the beacons, the tests, a complete history of humanity's encounters with the mysterious vessel, dating back to prehistoric times. As we approached Earth orbit, Wilson placed a hand on my shoulder. Do you think we can pass, whatever this test is? I looked out at the planet below, blue and fragile against the void. I don't know, but I believe we must try. She nodded. For what it's worth, I'm glad you're here, Commander. Admiral, I corrected with a small smile. Not anymore. We're both ghosts now, remember? As the emissary entered Earth's atmosphere, I felt it again. That sense of being observed, evaluated. The observer was with us still, watching through our eyes, listening through our ears, judging our every action. The trial continues, I thought, and we will face it together. I sit now in my home on Earth, watching the stars through my window. The cancer has spread further, leaving me with days rather than weeks. But I've accomplished what I set out to do. The truth is known. Humanity understands what faces it. The war with the Proxima Coalition has entered a ceasefire as both species grapple with the revelation that they are being tested, judged by criteria they still don't fully understand. Fleet intelligence reports that the first joint human Proxima expedition to the marked region departs next month. They've named it Project Understanding, though few know why. The massive ship they've built for the mission is unlike any in either fleet, more heavily armed and armoured than a simple exploration vessel should need to be, but also carrying the finest scientists and diplomats from both species. They haven't asked for my input, but they've invited me to observe the launch, to watch as humanity takes its next step in whatever test awaits us. I won't live to see their return, but perhaps that doesn't matter. Perhaps what matters is that we're trying, learning, growing. The stars hold no comfort for me anymore, but they do hold answers, and whatever is out there, whatever visited us that day at Darwin, is waiting to see if we're worthy of them. Sometimes on clear nights like this, I swear I can see a distortion in the sky, a ripple in reality, watching, waiting, judging. The Phantom warship was a myth until it showed up in battle, and I fear and hope it will appear again soon, for that will mean the trial continues. And where there is trial, there is hope. Hope that one day we might understand, that we might pass the test, that we might join whatever comes next. As I write these final words, I can feel my strength ebbing. The medications barely touch the pain anymore, but my mind remains clear. Clear enough to wonder what will happen to this record once I'm gone. Will it too be erased, corrupted, forgotten, or will it find its way to someone who needs to hear it? In the 3 months since our return from the beacon, much has changed. The ceasefire with the Proxima Coalition has solidified into formal peace talks. Joint research teams study the ancient technology discovered at Darwin and similar outposts. Humanity and the Proxima, once poised at the brink of mutual annihilation, now cautiously cooperate. Is this what the observer wanted? Is cooperation part of the test? Or merely a step towards something greater? Dr. Wilson visits when she can, though her work with the joint expedition keeps her busy. She brings updates on their progress, on the preparations for Project Understanding. Her optimism is infectious, even to a dying man. We've decoded more of the beacon transmissions, she told me during her last visit. They're not just signals, they're data packets, information about previous civilizations that faced the trials. Did any pass? Her expression grew troubled. Some, not many. And the others? That's the strange part. There's no record of their destruction. They simply stop being mentioned, as if they reached a threshold and then changed. Into what? That's what we're trying to find out. She didn't stay long. Security concerns meant her visits had to be brief, untraceable. As she was leaving, she pressed something into my hand. A small device I recognized as a neural imprinter. Technology still in the experimental stages. For your records, she said, it will preserve your consciousness, your memories, experiences, knowledge, everything that makes you who you are. To what end? Project Understanding will need voices of experience, those who have directly encountered the observer. She met my gaze steadily. Your body is failing, Jack. But your mind, what you know, what you've seen, that could still make a difference. You're asking me to become a digital ghost. I'm offering you a chance to see this through to the end, to witness humanity's answer to the trial. I haven't decided yet whether to use the imprinter. The technology is untested, the ethics murky at best. To exist as data, as memory without body, is that really survival, or merely the illusion of it? Perhaps it doesn't matter. Perhaps what matters is the continuation of knowledge, of understanding. The observer judges us collectively, not individually. My experiences might help those who come after me comprehend what we face. Last night I dreamed of the Dauntless again, of that moment when the mysterious vessel appeared, defying all we understood about physics and spaceflight. In the dream, I could see beyond its exterior, through the hull to what lay within. It was empty. No crew, no machinery, nothing we would recognize as technology. Just space, infinite space, far larger than the vessel itself could contain. And within that impossible space, points of light like stars, billions of them swirling in patterns too complex to comprehend. I woke gasping, my sheets soaked with sweat. The dream felt more real than my waking state, as though I glimpsed some fundamental truth that my conscious mind couldn't process. On impulse, I reached for a pen and paper. Actual paper, nothing digital that could be erased or altered. I began to sketch what I'd seen inside the vessel, the patterns of light, the configurations they formed. I filled page after page until dawn broke, my hand cramping, my body screaming in protest. When I finally stopped and looked at what I'd drawn, I felt that familiar sensation again, of being watched, studied. But this time, it came with something new. A feeling of approval. The drawings made no sense to my conscious mind. Abstract patterns, complex geometries, symbols that resembled no language I'd ever encountered. Yet I knew somehow that they were important, that they contained information crucial to understanding the observer and its purpose. I sealed the drawings in a physical envelope and arranged for them to be delivered to Wilson after my death. Whatever they mean, she's the best chance of deciphering them. The pain is worse today. The doctors have increased my medication, but it merely dulls the edges. My body is failing rapidly now, the cancer consuming me, from within. Days, they say, perhaps only hours. I find I'm not afraid to die. After all I've seen, all I've experienced, death seems merely a transition, another state of being, perhaps even an answer to questions I've carried for decades. What troubles me is what I'm leaving behind. A humanity still blind to its place in the cosmos, still struggling to comprehend the trial it faces. A test with parameters we don't understand, judged by criteria we can barely imagine. Yet there is hope. In the peace talks with the Proxima, in Project Understanding, in the young officers and scientists who now know the truth and carry that knowledge forward. The observer watches, always watches, through the beginning of our species, through every critical juncture, through every triumph and failure. Perhaps it always will. And perhaps that's the point. Perhaps the watching itself is part of the test. To know we are observed, judged, and to continue anyway. To strive, to learn, to grow, despite the knowledge that we might fail. To be human in the face of the inhuman. I hear something now. A sound like the hull of a massive vessel creaking in the void. A vibration that shakes not the air, but reality itself. Looking out my window, I see the stars shifting, their light bending around a distortion in space. It's here, watching, waiting for my final moment. I am not afraid. The trial continues, and humanity will face it long after I am gone. Addendum Project Understanding Mission Log, Entry 1. The neural imprint of Admiral Jackson Wells has been successfully integrated into the ship's systems. Initial cognitive function tests show 97% fidelity to baseline patterns recorded before physical death. Upon activation, the Wells imprint immediately requested access to mission parameters and current status of human Proxima relations. After being briefed, the imprint expressed satisfaction with progress to date. The expedition departs Earth orbit in 6 hours. The imprint will serve as primary consultant for observer-related phenomena. Dr. Abigail Wilson will serve as liaison between the imprint and crew. All systems nominal. Crew morale high. The Wells imprint has requested this statement be appended to the log. The stars have regained their comfort, for in them I see not just the vastness of space, but the vastness of possibility. The observer watches, but so do we, and in that mutual observation, perhaps, we will finally understand. Mission Commander's note: the Henderson Drive is charged and ready. Course is set for the coordinates, provided in the Admiral's original star chart. Estimated arrival at the beacon, 72 hours. The trial continues.